Welcome to a brand new episode of Getting to the Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today's guest is, I'm just going to hit you with, I got illustrious guests. So this guest is noted musician Corey Wallace. Welcome to the podcast.
Man, thank you for having me.
I wasn't sure where I was going to take that initially.
Right.
Because I was going to say like former City Night, all of that.
I know. See, in looking at different TV shows, like Deezus and Mero, whenever they're introducing their guests, Deezus is always like, illustrious.
That's what I was going for, actually.
Illustrious. And I'm like, what better word do you have than to, introduce an illustrious guest? So I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Oh, no doubt, man. One of the things I try to do with it, I try to inject some of the stuff. You know how you'll go on different interviews and you'll listen to interviews and things like that. And sometimes it doesn't fit within it. Like the other podcasts I do on this network, it's just me talking junk and being like basically wild. And it's like, I can't go too left, and doing this because it doesn't come off as authentic.
Absolutely.
So we are in the yearbook. We're like kind of next to each other. We
always saw each other around the hallway. We gave, said what's up and everything.
What's good?
But I know everybody had different paths, like starting in like the 11th and 12th grade. I really got into music, so I wasn't seen anywhere else outside of like the international baccalaureate classrooms. I was in the band. I was like in every band. And then we even had groups that we made up, and I was started to try to gear towards, getting into college and becoming a musician. So
I was in that wave of kind of being in every kind of pocket, which is not too far from where I've stayed at in the subsequent decade plus, almost 2 decades. And that reminds me of how washed I am. But, I joked about that the other day. I was like, I pluck my grays, and my man was just like, you can't do that. I was like, I do it all the time.
See, it took me so long to start getting gray hair, and then it's a pride thing now, and even my partner, my lady, is just like, she's like, oh, you got a gray hair in your beard. And I'm like, oh, really? Where is it? And then she'll pluck it. And I'm like, why did you do that? Like, I take complete pride in my gray hairs. I'm getting old. I got wisdom, every time I teach another class of students, no matter it be high school, middle school, college, or whatever, it's just like, I have a lot to say because I've seen a lot of stuff, so let me, these gray hairs are proof.
I've seen a lot of things. I've heard. I only give him my eyebrows, which is wild. And like my beard, my boy was joking me. He was like, "I'm 3 years younger than you, and your facial hair is black." Yeah, I was like, "It's that Egyptian, aesthetic that I have going on." I've been confused a few times. But you touched on earlier, like your background at City with those last couple of years, it's like everything was music oriented or international baccalaureate or what have you. So how did you get started in music? What was like kind of one of those earlier experiences in music for you?
My whole family was very much into music and marching bands. I have one of those HBCU families, where if it wasn't Morgan, and it was Morgan State College at one point, but Morgan State University. If it wasn't that, it was Howard University. It had a couple people who went to Hampton, who went to Lincoln, who went to Cheney. So it's like very HBCU centric. So, and they're a bunch of talented people, funny enough, once I finally got into music after realizing I wasn't going to the NBA, nobody else was playing except for my sister and I, or like, some smaller younger cousins. But, my dad was a heavy influence as well. We had music all in the house. My parents, oldies, the old school classical music, straight ahead jazz, all types of stuff playing. And in addition to, my favorite types of music, I grew up in the golden era of hip hop. Everybody will say that. But when we were in middle school, I don't know, Reasonable Doubt dropped. And then you have, Illmatic dropped. And then, even when we got into high school, Capital Punishment, like some of my favorite albums, Outkast, started, I don't know. I'm going to make the case that we were in the golden era of hip hop.
You want to do that thing and say, not for.
I resisted. I was in the baseball for 6 years and basketball for that kind of overlapped, and then into high school, AAU. And then one day I walked into the band room. Yeah. I was already in the marching band, in the percussion section. And I don't know, man. So I quit after like a month, went back to sports. But I don't know, that day, it was like November of 2000. So this is almost 20 years now that I've been chipping away at it. And that's pretty late. I was about 15 years old. But in terms of, when you start playing an instrument, everybody starts in like middle school. But my middle school didn't have a program. I had a journalism program, had like a telecommunications, morning show program, but it was like, we're going to pass on music. So whatever. That one day I heard it and I was like, I think I want to play the trombone. I think I want, and I only knew it really in the context of marching band, but like the trombone section was working on a fanfare or something like that. And I was like, this is pretty powerful. Like this is, the trombone has been, equated or, people say it's very similar to the voice of God or just a human voice. James Weldon Johnson with God's trombones, literacy again, equating the voice of God to the instrument. But then also, because of the slide and how it can bend notes and everything, people think it's the closest thing to the human voice. So it was that day, it seemed like the instrument was singing. And I was like, man, I got to do this. So literally not every day, but every day since then, it's been about trying to, capture that in some form or fashion.
Chasing the dragon.
Yeah.
That description of kind of being around it early on. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me of, I think it was a memoir, Questlove's memoir. Okay. And, I fell into the trap. Not that it's a good book. It's a good memoir and all of that. Mm-hmm. But I fall into the trap. If people have the same birthday I have to kind of follow what they do. Right. So I got the book and kind of learned about his background. And he was just like, I was always around circles. Yeah. And he was like, being in a household, he's like, I saw everything in that. He's like, I wasn't necessarily a good student, but being around circles and being around, he's like, I come from a, musician family and being around circles. And he's like, I see everything in that way. He's like, so drums naturally work for me. Percussion naturally works for me. Right. And just, he always would go back to that one thing about being around it early and just kind of always pursuing that, whatever that next step is.
Right. I mean, it's definitely been a journey, but it's also the journey. I didn't realize the journey like completely, it keeps unveiling itself, different parts, the different sections of your path or my path have, shown themselves sometimes like right before they need to happen. I went to college looking to be a music educator. I come from a family of teachers, every level. So I wanted to be a music educator, kind of like my dad, and, just giving back. And within that first couple of months, I was like, whoa, all right, cool. I gotta figure out how to play this trombone better. Cause I thought I was like the big man on campus. Then I went to a school with a reputable trombone studio. And now I'm like, oh, I'm at the back of the line. This is I don't like this feeling, like I'm better than this. So in music, just like, in sports and medicine, you got to prove it. It's like, oh, you can do that. All right. So go do it. Show us all. So, a lot of hard work went into, that's why I talk to people or I see some of these shows on TV that like replicate the college experience, the HBCU experience. I'm like, dang, I wish I had that, man. Like not just the HBCU experience, but like, I wish I went out in college and had fun. I had some friends, but we were all at the music building together, long nights, just practicing on our different things because we knew what was coming ahead of us, like in a matter of years, our loving teachers would be, our adversaries. We're in competition for like jobs.
Yeah.
You know, so we had to close the gap very quickly or as quickly as possible. So like I said, that's what I've been doing ever since.
Yeah. It's, it's funny. Like what you said right there was really real. And it's like, I'm in the back of the line, like, oh, shit, like, and every now and again, like I've been podcasting for like 12 years and I'm an old person that apparently when I always get reminded of this and I was like, is this a backhanded thing? You've been doing it so long. And it's like, appreciate you. And every now and again, when I get linked up, cause in doing this and being COVIDed out, as I like to call it, the networking has been a little different. So I've been able to kind of reach out to people who know things. And even before that kind of started, where going to different people's setups, going to different people's studios, seeing like, wow, yours is really bad or yours is fire. How do I get to that? How can I make my thing better? And it's this one bit that I can't stop saying because, in a previous job I had, in higher ed, my girlfriend, she works there and still, and one of the guys that was a peer there, he fashioned himself to be a writer, and he said something really foul about one of the other employees, but he put it in a poem, and it was something for whatever this school's like. So they were putting out this thing, and he's like, "As others ascend, I'm here floundering." And I just always remember that. It's just like, okay, whenever I see someone that's doing very well, it's like, I know that I'm better than them. And I just say, meanwhile, I'm floundering. And it's just seeing these people just like succeed without putting in the work. And ultimately, what I'm hearing is you've spent the better part of the last 20 years, like putting in the work to get to where you're chasing a dragon. And I think that's lost among people, but I see it all the time with people, specifically in like playing instrumentations, namely like jazz. That's a thing. It's not just, I'm really good and I'm not going to do anything. You're not going to work at it. You burn out really quickly, I think. Right.
That's something that I'm seeing less and less. And I also see in my students, like that aspect of it, you know, like, man, so yeah, I can play the chord progression. I can play a couple tunes, take the A train, or or even if you get to the point where you're trying to play, John Coltrane's Giant Steps. If cool. I can, let me just go out and start my career. It's like, whoa, buddy, whoa, little sister. There's a lot more to this than that, and like the 20 years is putting in work on the trombone, but also, freelancing. I've been freelancing since 2006. So like I was in college, I was in every ensemble I could get into, like most of the time between 20 and 23 credits, per semester. And then and a lot of them were ensembles, but then a lot of them were like 3-credit classes. Cause I was like, man, I went to City College, I was in IB. I can handle this workload. And then it was just like, what am I doing to myself? Goodness, nobody let me. I had a 27-credit semester, and that just about. And like I said, there were a lot of orchestra and wind ensemble and jazz band and like jazz combo and all of these things, but they were only 1 credit. So those 3 credits were coming from the 3-credit intervals were coming from somewhere else. And man, I just about passed out that whole. And then at that point, I didn't even like coffee. So I was doing it straight. And I don't know how I made it through there, but that semester, my GPA kind of took a hit, but I learned a lot about myself. So, but anyway, it's like the whole journey or each part of the journey is about learning something else. And you can't put the cart before the horse, like to me, it doesn't work like that. Some people are exceptionally talented and they cover a lot of bases through very hard work ethic. And it's not to say I haven't or I didn't do that. It's just everybody's journey is different, But yeah, man, it is very important to take to embrace.
Well, Baltimore a little bit because you have ties. We know each other from being in the same city.
Come on, man. That's the city right there.
So you mentioned the thing about coffee. I'm a big coffee guy, and and I drink coffee as black as my soul. And
absolutely.
It was one thing that was kind of funny. I had a buddy who, when you're doing some of the freelance stuff, you're doing everything. And I listened to him. He's like, man, I'm just in awe of your work ethic and just the fact that you get so much stuff done. And I was like, you don't have to keep up. You can just try to do something. You know what I mean? And I take it as cocaine, I take it as coffee. I don't care. But I'm just getting the thing done because I'm imbued with that motivation to just do my best and make sure the next thing that I put out is the best thing that I put out.
Yep. Constantly be getting better.
Absolutely. So, who would you say are maybe 2 to 3 of your most influential, most impactful musicians that have been on your life, that have been in your life or your career?
In terms of listening or like people I know?
1 and 1. How about that?
Okay.
Because I just realized you are in the know. You're a working musician, so yeah.
I mean, all right. So I have to. My dad's definitely in there. You know, he would probably be number 1, just because we would have a lot of conversations, listen to a lot of music together, take trips to go to concerts. You know, one of my proudest memories is the first concert that I paid to take him to for his birthday. It was at Twins Jazz Club, which recently closed in DC. And my favorite trombonist, Vincent Gardner, you know, was playing, and it was just great. I was just looking at him the whole time with this glow on his face, like, man, my son is taking me out. That was great. You know, but we would have a lot of conversations. He impacted the way I think about teaching, but also how to teach people get to their level. You know, like a great teacher can explain something in a lot of different ways, you know, depending on how the student is actually accepting the information. You know, we're going to try it this way. We're going to try it this way. Do you get it yet? No. Okay, cool. Let me try to explain it this way. And there's a lot of,
you can broaden it. I realize how restrictive it is. Yeah. Feel free. I'm sorry.
No, you good, man. I've definitely had my grad school trombone professor, Jim McFalls, was very straightforward. I actually talked to him the other day after a long time. I'm not speaking to him, but excuse me. Man, he's a very funny person. Mm-hmm. You know, he's hilarious, but when it comes to playing music and the trombone, he's just like, I would often be in lessons like, well, I thought we were just joking. He's like, yeah, but can you play this though? It's like, you sound like you're not putting in the work, man. And I'm like putting like as much time in as I can, not even as I can, like until it's right. And then, you know, he's like, yeah, man, you can play it at this tempo, but can you play it at this tempo? Because when you're on the bandstand, you know, you can't say, all right, let's play it here. I mean, you can, but in real life, things change, you know, especially after you start. So what you start at that tempo can end up being something else. But his attitude is, but can you do it though? Like, let's not talk about it. You know, you have a gift of gab. You talk a lot and people like to hear you talk. That's great. But can you do it though?
It's that Japanese proverb, proof over argument.
Absolutely. You know, so you know, that cat, man. And I would get so mad, and then I'd be like, but I can't do it. Damn, damn you, you know, and it just made me want to work harder. And it's, I don't know if he hipped me to this saying, but it says, amateurs do it until they can get it right, and professionals do it until they can't get it wrong. And that changed the way I do a lot of things.
That's a good one.
Or the same way I wanted to approach things, you know. It's all about just trying to, you know, do it flawless, even if it's not flawless, you know, because that's subjective depending on who you're talking to, the situation. but you want to do it to the best of your ability and knock it out the park. And he actually, that type of thinking or that approach helped me to become a better freelancer, like just relentless in the pursuit of great, always sight reading well. Before the pandemic, I was often called for, to read things or for a gig, not having seen the music at all. So I would have to come in there and read it right before an audience as if I had studied this music, for 15 hours. Or, it's like the greatest hijinks of all time. It's like most of the cats you see on the bandstand are just like, whoo, all right. Living on the edge here. All right. Okay, go.
Like it's a lot of improv, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's a lot of improv, but it's you're training yourself for every type of situation. A lot of the times we're reading the music on just off the fly. I'm a band leader myself. I have put music in front of my band and they've never seen it before. And I'm like, we're going to try this out because I know you guys are great. Sometimes you crash and burn. Other times it comes out exactly as you had imagined or better, so. Those two people in terms of teachers, there's a lot of things that my undergrad professor, trombone professor, bestowed upon me that still stick with me as well. That a couple of professors, but mainly a trombone professor. But man. And then there's countless musicians. I listen to music all the time. Everything out now, whether it's like Lil whoever in the words of J. Cole, it's like I can't rock with all of it, but I'm going to try because it's, in essence, it's another perspective, right? Like it's about trying to understand people now. A lot of these musicians are being run by a bigger machine, and they're being told to say things or being told to approach things in a certain way. But, I still want to know because I also want to know what my students are listening to, Yeah.
So I think it gives you some context, and it's like the Littles or the rappers who have their degrees like NLE or whatever. It's like, wow, I didn't know that you were a social worker or something. You had a master's in that. Wow. Right. And that's your rap name too?
Exactly. Who was the rapper that was who's also a dentist? I know Paul Wall had created a whole business, from
the grills and stuff in that region, dude. Yeah.
Was it Young Jock? Was he a dentist or was it like?
Oh shit!
I can't even remember. Like,
if it's Young Jock, then that's wild. If it's Young Jock, because his song is going down. That's wild.
Yeah, I gotta look that up. But everybody's coming from somewhere. And
I like the diversified thing.
We gotta remember. Yeah, and then we gotta remember that it's all a hustle too.
Yes.
Like in the 2000s, we saw an era of hip hop where you could cash in, like literally cash in just by doing this thing. And like we see this like going way back, like to the 80s. We see this with admittedly NWA. Yeah. And we're talking about there's different aspects of NWA, but they've admitted to we had to rap about this so we could sell this and then get this money. And this was like after the first album, it's, I don't know, man.
And that's why the thing happens where when someone's like, after your first album, it's kind of whack. And it's interesting because, like I said, I've been doing this thing for 12 years and I've been brought in to consult, to teach, to do a lot of different things to teach at universities and things because people hear podcasts and they're like, vampires or what have you. And the thing that catches me is, there have been different people that I've helped launch their thing and then they get the notoriety. And I don't want to be one of those sour grapes people, but when you see it becomes a formula and inherently I look at podcasting. If you're taking it seriously, not just another way to diversify what you're doing. I think it's very DIY and it's very punk rock or whatever.
Absolutely.
So if you have, this is the formula, use this, only talk about this. Black guys only do barbershop podcasts. It makes me really tight. And I take I take pride in trying to do something that's informative while being entertaining. And it's that Oscar Wilde thing I got put onto recently of, if you want to, for someone to listen to what you're saying, if you want to get across something that's important, do it through comedy, do it through humor. And, that's why court jesters and stuff are around, and there's a few dudes that put me on that I know from back at City or even at Morgan where I went to undergrad at. They're like, yo, you always had a way of having something really wild and an really wild undercurrent, but then it's serious, but also hilarious at the same time.
Right.
And that's the thing that people don't see the nuance. People don't do the critical thinking. And when someone says, because of these machines and all that are kind of running these things, you're using that as a means to continue this dumbing down process. You don't have to stretch for it. It's right here. I'm going to baby feed it to you.
Right.
It doesn't work.
Let's see.
I overthink things.
No, not at all. Not at all. There was actually something that you said that reminded me of something. A stereotype is one of the stereotypes in music is that Black musicians can't read music. And I found that out very young. And I was like, okay, so what's not going to happen is I will not be limited. And then when I step into every room, I'm going to be one of the best sight readers there. And I'm never going to be fired because I can't read something, so like those stereotypes end up putting chips on your shoulder.
Absolutely.
When I got to undergrad, I had a big chip on my shoulder. I'm like, oh, y'all, because I'm in the back of the line. No, this isn't because I suck. It's because you guys are great. And I'm going to get there. Just give me time. Oh, okay. Oh, you think just because I'm from Baltimore? Okay. And I'm like, I had nothing but chips on my shoulder. And then that also has a negative effect as well.
Yes.
With how you approach people, approach situations, everything is competition, or, you can acquire or develop a very aggressive personality, and I've always been laid back, but there was, I remember a couple, even my dad would be like, man, you gotta get that chip off, like you think Baltimore is just a wire, or you think Baltimore is like just a murder rate, or you think Baltimore is just whatever. And it's like, okay, so, I may not live there for my industry. I want to be in New York, or at the time I wanted to live in DC, like right after grad school, because there's a lot of great musicians down there and I wanted to be a part of that scene. But I wanted to move to New York and try to make it sustainable here, sustainable living. And I've been able to do that, over the last 7 years. But I've had a chip on my shoulder. It's like, oh, okay, I got you.
So
go ahead.
So because you're already segueing into it. So I wanted to have you like describe that transition or what have you of going from Baltimore in this region to going to New York. And, outside of which sounds like it's a tray of chips, not just one chip. It's a bag of chips.
Yeah.
Outside of that, what did you maybe take from here in terms of work ethic, personality, artistry, what have you, that helped you in that transition to New York?
So there are two big chapters, and of course there's chapters within chapters, but there's my younger life, 18 up to 18, spent in Baltimore, and I went away for college, was there for 5 years, changed my major, had to spend an extra year's money. That sucked. Still paying that off. But, then I came back, had grad school. I went to Towson University for grad school. It was cool. But then I wanted something else. And my ex-girlfriend at the time and her family lived in DC. So I was going back and forth 4 or 5 times a week. And I wanted to be a part of that scene. I had a growing number of friends who were down there, lived there, from there. And, Baltimore, I was playing in Baltimore as well, but there was something about the scene down there, and then there came gigs, regular gigs. I was in the Bohemian Caverns Jazz Orchestra with Thad Wilson, big band, a couple different groups. And I was playing in like at HR 57 over on 8th Street. And I was meeting a lot of people, and it was great. And I was meeting a lot of great Black musicians too, between Baltimore and DC. And I love that feeling, you know, and I mean, musicians otherwise too, but I pride myself, you know, I love the culture. So, you know, and it was Black musicians playing this Black music very, very at a very high level. Yes. And I loved it, you know, and like, I didn't necessarily see that in undergrad or graduate school, because I mean, I told you earlier, my family was an HBCU family. I was the one guy. I didn't get the memo, you know, but I mean, I got the memo. I just chose to, you know, study the trombone at a different place, you know, at 2 different places, but then went back down to DC, or went to DC. And then after the 3rd year, I want to say, this guy who would become like one of my best friends, Brent Burkhead, said, man, he kept saying, man, look, I live in New York now. I live between both places. You can make it, man. You could do it. Like, and I was like, whatever, man. I'm not ready. Not ready. You know, and because New York is like that big thing, you know, like if you're not prepared, it's going to chew you up and spit you out. And I didn't want that to happen, you know, but there's also benefits in having that happen. You go away, you lick your wounds, you get better, and you come back. You know, I wasn't looking at it that way either, but, he eventually, persuaded me, and, you know, I moved up there. I was just like, man, and it was a great, change, and it was a welcome change. You know, I was excited I had been going back and forth for gigs and, sessions, but I started to really dig it, man. And even in the, you know, the low moments and you know, of not having a lot of work and wondering what's going on, is like, I was working a lot in DC. What am I doing? Like, why did I, you know, come here? And then things would start to unravel, or not unravel, but like start to get better, you know, like starting to work with people. I would see people on the scene. I was a fan of their music, you know, Bilal and, you know, just many of the great musicians that I've always listened to. I'm not sure why Bilal just stuck out.
I was going to say Raheem Devon as well.
Well, I've not met him. I did. It was in DC, but I was talking with my sister about that the other day. But a lot of musicians, you know, and that kind of got me out of this, you know, this fanboy state that I've always been in. You know, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Robbie Coltrane, John Coltrane's son. Oh my God. And like, when I met him, it was to play, you know, we were playing a gig at the DC Jazz Festival with this band that's based here in New York. And he's like, yeah, man. I mean, yeah, like, you know, I'm going to play this horn now. I'm gonna warm up. I'm like, Robbie Coltrane's playing this horn. Oh my God. You know, it's like, I had those fanboy moments, but talking to him even more, I mean, a lot more after that, just picking his brain about things. It was great, you know, like everybody became just normal people making a living. Yeah. You know, exceptionally talented people that put a lot of time into the craft and into the music, into the culture, into the scene. But we're all just people. We put on our pants and put on our clothes the same way. You know, so now when you have, again, going back to these machines or these record companies, which are kind of dwindling at this point, you know, but even still, when they choose someone to invest in,
the anointing,
yeah, that can do a lot of things for the ego. I've seen that up close, but you know, people are still people. I've seen that from, I'm not going to say both sides because I'm not backed by a record company, you know, but not saying I don't want that, but you know, it's a whole process, man. A lot of people lose themselves to that, and they lose their identity in the music.
So and maybe you can agree with this. I don't know, but one of the things I've been kind of pondering with is this notion that people who have that, because you touched on it a little bit earlier, maybe the reputation that Baltimore may have, and coming from there, it's just like, oh well, you're this based on this pop culture or this news or whatever. I think one of the things that gets lost is there is a degree of refinery and anti-BS and authenticity that comes from Baltimore. And I think when you make that move, because I'm in my head, I'm thinking of making the move, and I don't know for what. I'm not a musician or anything, obviously, but
it's the mecca for a lot of things, man.
But I'm thinking of making that move to like New Orleans. It's like almost a sister city, right? And,
absolutely.
And, I just like, am I good enough here? Have I done it here where people are like, okay, we rock is what you're doing. I've passed that test.
Right.
Do you view Baltimore in a way of that's that breeding ground? It's like, it doesn't get the recognition, but if I can get through and get on here and then go somewhere else.
One thing, people will not say about me is that, I bullshit, I'm that we don't, and there's all different types of people, from Baltimore, like all different types of personalities and everything. But the crux of the city is, just upstanding people, and that, we tell the truth. Like, we're not afraid to say it. And that comes from my family, and my family's been in Baltimore for like 250 years. The historians of the family could tell me like where where we're from before that, but we're like from Baltimore, and it's just like, I don't know, man. Everybody, one of the main things that people say about me is just like, hey, man, that's a real dude. He'll tell you the truth, no matter how much it hurts. But then he'll tell you how to like. I don't know. It's kind of like a therapy session, but he's not a therapist. It's like he'll tell you, like, man, you bullshitting. But then it's not even in a nice way. It's like, but he'll also tell you that you need to like get your life together, and like he'll feed this positivity into you. I'm like, okay, please stop talking. But it's kind of it's true, and I try to try to have that integrity and be very honest with myself too. I don't know.
It sounds like you were describing a similar trait that I have where it's just like my bullshit detector goes off really quickly. Yeah. It's very sensitive now. It's not quite a Richter scale. It's just like, and there have been so many different things. Cause like I said, people hear podcasts and just the things come out.
Right.
And especially I've been doing it so long, and I've had some hidden figures moments. Oh, you can be an uncredited executive producer. I was that's not a thing. Or, we want to use your platform to bring us up. And it's like, no, not a thing, not happening. And
I don't like that either.
And at the same time, it's not anti-collaboration, but it's like, I don't really like what you guys do. And I don't know if I want to bring that to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You guys seem to know. And I think, in looking back, like maybe 5 years ago, it was something that somebody mentioned to me, after all the stuff that happened with like Freddie Gray and the fallout and all of that, is someone mentioned to me that it's like this weird Game of Thrones. Someone's fighting for the chair of who runs these black people in Baltimore. And there's a version of that happening as who represents black pop culture and who is the representative creatively for black folks in Baltimore. And it's a few dudes I know, to your thing earlier about just when someone gets a little bit of a buzz, a little bit of a clout, suddenly it goes to their head. I've run into a few people and they start 2003 Bill Cosbying, like talking down on what black people should be doing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who and why are you the representative?
Right. Who? I'm not going to say the hackneyed phrase, who died and left you, I'm not, but it is like that though, and I don't know. I live in New York, and New York has a whole lot of, it has a whole lot of, steam behind it. You live in New York, you doing it big, huh? No, I just wanted to challenge myself and try to see if I can make it there. I'm still there. And that's not just because of my doing. Like, I've had a lot of help, and not like a lot of like, white privilege, like long money help, like wealth help. I'm just saying, you find your community. I found my community. I've built a community here, and like, and different communities. I'm a part of different communities, and we all help each other. But it's just, no, I just live in New York. I wanted to see if I could make it, and I'm still making it, and I love it. I don't love everything about the city. Sometimes the city is straight trash, and like, or just the people, or just like, the air about like being a New Yorker, but yeah. I mean, I've lived in Crown Heights and Bed-Stuy.
Yeah,
I taught in the South Bronx, and like live very close to Harlem now. I mean, I live on the Upper West Side, but it's like I'm gonna leave that where it is. Upper West Side is very nice as well, but I'm just saying I lived in all of these places with Black and brown people, just because I wanted to live somewhere that looked like home, so I could feel like I was home. I moved to Bed-Stuy. First thing, I lived down the street from Marcy Projects, where I grew up listening to Jay-Z, and I'm like, this is Marcy Projects. Oh my God, yo. And I started like walking the streets. I was like listening to Jay-Z all the time, rapping the lyrics. Yeah. And then, shit would pop off. And I'm just like, you should probably get your ass down. Like, still look over your shoulder. Like, it's not a game. You could be like, oh, wow, this is great. This is where he grew up. All right.
I got enamored. I got enamored. It was like maybe a year and a half ago. I went up there. My girlfriend's from Park Slope. She's like from Brooklyn, and
okay.
And she always talks about it. She's just like, and her dad was like a playwright, Black playwright. It's like always around theater, always around creatives.
Yeah,
and I had one of those moments where one of her best friend lives in Queens. So we went up there, did the whole Highline tour. They showed me all of the touristy things, but some of the places that had culture, not just the corny stuff. Right. And, when we were on the train, I was just like, yo, this is what Capone Noriega was rapping about. This dude stop. And they're just like looking at me like, this Baltimorean noob. It was really funny.
Yeah. I mean, you have that touristy thing, living. I was on Hart Street and Nostrand. So like, like all the mentions of Nostrand Ave, like what immediately comes to mind, Kanye mentioned it in a song, like Flatbush and Tillery, Busta Rhymes would always talk about that. And the first time I crossed that intersection, I was like, I'm in the land of Busta Bus. This is amazing. You have those moments because we're hip hop heads. We grew up listening to it, and I have family in New York, but they always came down when it never came up here. So, it's always been a thing. I still do that in certain clubs, like the Bitter End. I believe that's where Donny Hathaway recorded that live album. And the first time, I performed there a lot before the pandemic, but it was just like every time I'd be in there, I'd have a moment of like, wow, like Donny Hathaway was on his stage, or like, this live album was recorded at the Blue Note, and I'm in the Blue Note. I'm performing at the Blue Note tonight. Like the first time I was there, of course, you had to get a selfie with the sign,
of course.
But, all of these things started happening, and I was just, it hasn't worn off, like I'm still excited. I don't think I ever want to lose that, like I'm still excited to be a part of this life and try to make it happen. I'm excited to see what's on the other side of this pandemic. I'm excited, like we were saying earlier, how things are, we're still finding ways to be creative. Everything's gone online and everything, but even some up here, things have gone outdoors. Like in Baltimore, a lot of my friends are playing out, and they, all right,
sidewalk serenades and all of that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, how can we get paid for this though? How can we monetize this? Put out your Cash App name, put out your Venmo name, and it's like, it's not begging, but even if you looked at it as begging, we like musicians play on the street all the time.
You sing for your supper.
To a degree, I played in the subways when you first come here, and it's not, for some people it's to make rent. Of course, you can use the money however you want to use it, but to play long, you have to put long hours into this in order for it to make sense when it comes out of your horn or out of your voice, or out of your mouth rather. Like you have to figure out a lot of things about what you're trying to do. It has to crystallize, and you have to figure out things for yourself. It has to make sense for yourself in order for it to make sense to somebody else. You know, like, so I would play in the subways with friends, with older cats. I learned a lot about the language, that the bebop language, a lot, just about music. A lot about like what things worked for me in what situations. And I was, you never end that journey never ends, but, yeah, man, it's just about like never being, not letting your ego ever get too big to, realize what needs to be done. I've been in places where it has, but you hopefully grow from that.
It's like this thing from Eckhart Tolle where he had mentioned you don't want to let your ego in through the back door. And I try to be a self-aware person, and every now and again I get a little gassing, and I'm like, all right, I'm that dude. Oh, I'm the big wave, baby. And it's like, whoa, why am I cutting wrestling promos? It's wild. And So that's the thing to definitely be aware of. And
it's your community too, though, man. Like the people around you will hold you down, quote unquote, but they'll also bring you down when you get too high. Like it's two ways to that street. Like I know I have good people around me, and
I need to keep a couple people around me. Some are like, I have my younger brother. He's one of those dudes. Like if he's Aries Spears from Jerry Maguire. It's like, that's my brother. Yes, that's my brother. And one of my co-hosts, he's kind of the same thing. He's kind of like very flat, straight hip hop head. And he will call you out on it. Cause at one point I was still trying to rap when he and I first met. And he was just like, shit's trash. I was like, I appreciate you. So I get that degree of honesty. And then they're doing it. They're involved in what I'm doing for the right reasons, and they keep me on point. And it's like, no, that was funny. Do more of that. Like, I don't know about that. And what were you thinking here? Actually, because feedback sometimes when you're creating, and you're trying to create and trying to work on things, like one of the things that I like stand-up comedy, and it's hard for them to do it. So a lot of comedians are being podcasters, and because you can't go out and try stuff out in the nightclubs because they're not open. Right. So getting that feedback and working through things is something. I have one last question. Okay. Before we wrap up, and shameless plugs, all of your social media, everywhere they can find you. But again, I admire what you're doing, man. I look up to you, man, like from afar, man. Look, so
I appreciate it. I appreciate it, man. That means a lot. I mean, another reason to go out, and it's not that I've left Baltimore or like, abandoned Baltimore. I take that with me wherever I go. I just know at a certain point in time, I mean, and there's a lot of great musicians that still live in Baltimore. There's a whole scene, and the scene is growing, and it's amazing, and it's low key, making me jealous. I'm not there, but every time I come back, I know I have a place to play or go, listen to cats, and to support them, and support the scene. But I just wanted to be here, and I wanted to figure out something else. But like Baltimore is always with me. People just choose different paths, and I wanted to be here, for a little while, maybe not forever, but whatever.
It's definitely a loop. Baltimore. People I've talked to who are from like New York that come down, and then vice versa. They always talk about that loop that, I lived in Baltimore for a while, or I lived in New York for a while. They're on the other end if they're here. So it's very common. So my last question, this is kind of whack. I own one record, and it's a Charles Mingus record, because that's my guy.
Which one is it though? I mean, all of them are great, but I'm just saying, is it Fables of Faubus?
I am blanking. I know it has a green cover. I have it mounted somewhere. Okay. All right. But what is it? Black Saint and the Center Lady is on my list, because that's a fire joint. That was my introduction, by the way.
Absolutely. Okay.
When I read about his personality, I was like, okay, so when they do the biopic, I need to get cast in this movie, right? Because I just want to be a big guy. Like, look, don't mess that note up now.
Right.
Yeah. So when your eventual biopic gets made, who's playing you in the biopic? Like, if you can have anyone play you in this biopic, like in 5 years or so, when they're doing the Corey Wallace biopic,
Oh man,
it's
I
like
need a little longer than that.
it's like CAW. It's the CAW on there, and it's just like
look. All right, so
from New York.
Ideally, I want to take it. I want to go in the way LeBron is kind of handling things. He's going to play basketball as long as he needs to.
Oh my gosh!
Till Bronny comes in and is a Laker as well. They're going to play like 2 seasons together. They're going to get a championship for the Lakers.
A lot of lobs to each other.
Yeah, right. And then, Bronny takes over. Bron sails off into the sunset. Like if I have a son, I want my son to play me.
Okay, that's fire. That's fire.
I don't know if John David Washington would ever play Denzel, but I love the dynamic they have. I mean, I got a soft face for like all fathers and sons. I love mothers too. I love my mother, but I was really close to my dad before he passed. So like I'm gonna play my dad, in his biopic, and then my son's gonna play me. So if that's possible, hopefully my son is tall like I am, so they don't have to, fill his shoes with,
use the wild CGI, use the blocks.
Right.
Yeah, we did a movie review yesterday on King of New York, one of my favorite movies, and I'm looking at Lawrence Fishburne in the movie, and I was like, yo, this is what my dad was dressing like in the 80s.
Right.
And we how you do that thing of like, who do you relate to in the movie the most?
Yeah.
And I will let other people say it because I'm all over the place.
Right.
And my man's just like, you're clearly Jimmy Jump. I was like, wow, I'll take it. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Let's do it. Let's get it.
That's what's up, man.
Shameless plugs. Promote your socials, your website, and things that you have coming up in the next, what have you. I mean, I know COVID's weird, so.
Yeah, I know. It is. But like we were saying earlier, we as creators, we continue to find ways to get the many voices or the creativity out into the world. And social media and the internet has made that even more possible. It's a lot more stuff to sift through for exactly what you want. Good music. But, you can find me. I'm around. My website is www.cawallacemusic.com. Like the letter C, the letter A, wallacemusic.com. And I'm under my name on all social media, I believe. So on Instagram, at the Big Dog Cometh,
Damn right.
I play on Iceman Cometh, what they call George Gervin, but also the novel. But it's DAWG, the Big Dog Cometh. But also my music page at the Corey Wallace Dubtet.com, or not .com, at the Corey Wallace Dubtet. And everybody always asks about what is dubstep. Do you guys play dubstep? No, we don't. Like everybody used to call me, it would. But everybody used to call me C-Dub, and I wanted like a creative name. I'm like, it's going to be quintet or sextet for 6 people, septet for 7 people. How about I just make it nebulous? It's going to be C-Dubtet? No, the Corey Wallace Dubtet. I like it. And people have grown to love it. And especially with our approach to music and blending a lot of music together, not just straight ahead jazz, which is, what we love and what we've, play a lot of here in New York. But, we grew up in as our parents' offspring. I had to listen to a lot of other styles of music, and I love it. I still listen to it, and I'm a part of it too. I perform that music. I've, performed with the Temptations and, a lot of different groups. It's not time to name drop and everything, but it's great to have performed with those groups. But then also I'm glad that music exists in my music as well. Like it's a default setting because I've chosen the members of the group, to a T, and we all come from very similar places, so it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool experience. And, before the pandemic, the idea was to put out an album this year. So we're going to still see if we can do that, get into the studio and at least have it recorded before next year, but yeah, that's coming as well. So definitely follow me and check my website for updates, and in the music, I'm always putting up music and whatnot. So, but yeah, man.
That's fantastic. And you've been the first musician, I think, that I've interviewed. So this is also a treat for that reason.
See, man, look, now I got to come back and we can talk about, just our favorite albums. And
I'm here for it.
Like, we'll have a whole episode. I'm now your manager, son. Like, you gonna have an episode about, just Mingus music. How about that?
Hell yeah. Like I said, illustrious guest. And
see, man, we got a future, man. It's going to be great. This is a spinoff podcast. Like me and you, we're going to do a music podcast. That'd be dope.
Look, I'm here for it.
Look, come on, man. We out here.
So, for Corey Wallace, thanks again for coming on and just being a great guest for this.
Man, thank you for having me.
I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art in and around Baltimore.